अपारमौलिपर्यन्तां गुरुनामाकृतिं स्मरितेन विघ्नप्रणश्यन्ति सिद्धन्ति च मनोरथः लक्ष्मीतनोतुमितरामितरानपेक्षमङ्गृद्वयं निगमशाकिशिखा प्रवालं हैरम्बमम्बुरुहडम्बरचौर्यनिग्रहं विघ्नातिभेदशतधारचुरन्तरन् सर्वेषां स्वागतम्. This is the positive psychology session for the 38th shloka. So, when we discuss the elements of Advaita and the most important terms that we need to know about Advaita, the most important term that in positive psychology also we should know is a concept called as mindfulness. So, what is this mindfulness? What is its orientation? What do we have to learn about it? What should we understand about it? We will discuss that in the next few sessions of positive psychology. So mindfulness, why, how is this related? This is basically when we are talking about avidya and all those things, we need to be in a state of awareness. State. So it is a state. So understanding that is mindfulness now. Now, basically, when we are talking about mindfulness, it is an equivalent to something that we have in Sati and Smriti, that in our ancient that we have. So it is basically when we recall, Sati is when we can recall to the mind the establishment of certain some samskaras and we recall, right? So that that particular state is what we can confer as mindfulness. Now, when we are talking about this mindfulness, what are we trying to say over here? Mindfulness is basically a state of being fully present, being fully engaged, but it is being aware of whatever is happening. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean that we have to participate in it, but being aware of it. That is the speciality of this mindfulness, that developing one particular sense of awareness beyond our sensory perceptions. That is, everything has a particular limit, right? So going beyond that. Now, because of human faculties, we have further reduced those limits, but going beyond that, that is what we are trying to do over here in mindfulness. So it is a key concept in positive psychology. Now, this this is mindfulness is important for us because it helps us to bring about certain kinds of calmness. The faculties of mind usually it tries to reply to anything and everything. So the speciality of mindfulness is not to get involved in the whole set of ongoings of the samsara, but rather to be only observant of it. So that is the most important thing. So usually, how do we cultivate this mindfulness, and how do we uh, so usually how do we cultivate this sense of mindfulness is basically given through simple meditation techniques, but there are different forms of that as well. So before we go into that, we need to understand what these important what are the foundations of this state of mind. So there what we understand is there are basically the basic orientation of Buddhism. We can find some relevance where there is the truth of dukkha, then there is an origin of the dukkha, then obviously the truth that dukkha can end, and only when the dukkha ends we can go towards the path of realization. These are the simple things that we can get out of uh, Buddhism. Now, when we think about this, understanding ourselves first. Why do we suffer? There is suffering because we are first taking into our realm because we are not able to understand that there is a Karna Sharira, there is a uh, a different spirit, different realm of existence, etc., etc., and all. We are just taking our own physical existence over there. From here, we have to start. So, starting from here, the first thing that we are deciding on is that we are suffering. There is some suffering over there. Is that now we have to first understand what is the nature of that suffering? Is it permanent? Is it that something that is going to continue elaborately, continue for whatever period of time, etc., etc.? Is it the same for everyone? The nature of the suffering, etc., etc. While suffering can be accepted as a truth, that means that is there among everybody. The nature we cannot say is the same for everyone. We can also not say that it is for the same amount of time everybody suffers. So it is relative. So therefore, what we can say is that there is suffering. Obviously, if there's a suffering, there has to be an origin to that suffering. There has to be one reason to it, suffer for something. So keeping these two in mind and the relativeness of that suffering, we can also conclude that once that there has to be an end to suffering also, because it is relative. No, for me it can be one day, for somebody it can be 1 hour also. So it ends somewhere, so it ends. From that ending, we can actually start, we can go, or we will be at a normal state of mind to take up the path of liberation. Because when we are coming from a negatively bent mind, our quest is to get out of that negativeness, but not to attain liberation. So if when I'm coming from some dukkha, the point is to get rid of the dukkha. Then I reach a normal state of mind. Then I'm not trying anymore. Only when I think about, there is a saying in Kannada also, Sankata Bandaga Venkataramana. We only think about a higher power only when we are stuck in some ordeal, facing some trouble. But beyond that, that is what is meaning. That is what they are trying to say over here. When we are trying to think about the truth, when we are not under suffering. Under suffering, if we are thinking about the ultimate truth or the ultimate form or the ultimate reality, that is only because we want to escape from suffering. But let us get out of that suffering first. Once we get out of that suffering, because the suffering is temporary in nature, but even if I don't try, it will end someday. That is the point of it. So there is a cause for this suffering, there is suffering, and there is the end to that suffering. After that it ends, that then becomes the path to liberation. So this is the understanding, and this state that we are trying to reach after suffering cedes is mindfulness. So mindfulness does not come under any of these acts. So when there is suffering also, we are not wondering what is mindfulness. No. Mindfulness is that state of being involved, being present when we are not under any duress. That is the point that they are trying to make. So this becomes the foundation for mindfulness. So what is that state we are trying to cultivate? We are trying to cultivate a state of recalling certain samskaras, of being aware of whatever is going on in and around us, of everything, without participating. And for us to not be participating, that means not given to our vrittis, it should be that we are not under any duress. Therefore, we should understand the nature of dukkha and we should let it seed completely. Then we can cultivate this notion or this state of mindfulness. So this is one part of it. We'll see the second part in the next session. स्वस्ति प्रजाभ्यः प्रतिपालयन्तां न्यायेन मार्गेण मही महिषा गोब्राह्मणेभ्यो शुभमस्तु नित्यं लोकाः समस्ताः सुखिनो भवन्तु कायेन वाचा मनसेन्द्रियैर्वा बुद्ध्यात्मना वा प्रकृते स्वभावात् करोमि यत्किञ्च सकलं परस्मै नारायणाय समर्पयामि।